What's up, everyone? It's Dakota, and welcome back to another Magic the Gathering video. And today I want to talk about Pioneer because it's been a while since we've even approached the format. And unfortunately, I think Pioneer is in probably one of the darkest places it's ever been, to being probably one of the most hyped formats when it was first kind of released and it was talked about and it was finally going to be a fully supported format. Of course, we had weekly bans for a very long time, and even then, like, the format was still really fun. It was very diverse, and we fast forward to now. Of course, we've gone through the COVID times. We've gotten back to competitive Magic being at the forefront, at tabletops instead of being online. And Pioneer, I just feel like at every point has gotten, hasn't really gotten a fair shake. And even going into 2025, we know that Pioneer has been essentially 86th from the RCQ format. And that doesn't mean that there's no way to qualify for Pro Tours or anything like that, online via, Pioneer. I know that essentially a Magic the Gathering Arena has kind of adopted Pioneer as that kind of format. But overall, it feels like Pioneer is in a pretty rough spot, and it looked so promising after the set of regional championships that went on, where up until very late in the year, and I want to say even over the course of the whole series of the regional championships across all over the world, there wasn't a repeat deck that won the event, which is crazy. And I think the metagames were pretty diverse, all things considered. We've actually seen some pretty big shakeups as well in the format, from the start of the regional championship series to the very end, thanks to some very impactful bannings. And that's what I really want to talk about today, is the Pioneer metagame, and just kind of give my thoughts on the metagame as a whole, and really the thoughts on the format, as again, I think it was kind of cheated, and essentially at this point is on the very far back burner, kind of with the legacy formats of the world, where Modern and Standard just are being pushed to the forefront. Modern, of course, being probably one of the most beloved 60-card constructed formats in Magic, that has gotten some new life with some very, very, very impactful bans and unbans that took place just a month ago. And on top of that, too, Standard, it just seems to be getting better and better with every set that gets released, and probably becoming one of the best constructed formats. Honestly, one of the most diverse. We just had a 1,500 person open tournament take place where, it just was a huge success, and we're going to be getting even more of those coming later down the pipeline. But today I want to talk about Pioneer, just because that's a format that I absolutely loved playing. It's a format that I really wanted to dive into and explore, and I did for the very, very early parts of that format, and just being totally engrossed in what was going on and trying to keep up with the trends and everything. And now, essentially, it's unimportant for 95% of competitive play, which is very unfortunate, because again, I think we had a pretty diverse metagame and a pretty diverse set of regional championships as well, in terms of what the metagames actually looked like and how everything actually adapted. And we look to be pretty set for 2025, and unfortunately we may never get that chance. But, of course, before we talk about the Pioneer metagame and give some thoughts about the Pioneer format as a whole, if you're not already subscribed to the channel and you want to see more videos from me, where we do talk about the Standard, Modern, and Pioneer formats, as well as doing other longer form videos and discussion videos, such as this one. So if you're interested in any of that stuff, please consider subscribing and ringing that notification bell so you know when future videos get posted. It's a free easy way to support me and my content. And if you want to help me get my content out to more people, please leave a like and, of course, comment on the video down below. If you want to, let me know what you think about the Pioneer format. If you think it kind of got ripped off, if this is probably just for the best, and we should just kind of focus on Standard and Modern as the main qualifications for, tabletop qualifications for like regional championships, Pro Tours, and things like that. I would definitely like to hear the feedback and hear your thoughts in the comment section down below. Of course, if you go to the description of my videos, you will find a link to my Discord server. You can go ahead, follow that link, and join over there. I do greatly appreciate, kind of creating community and, definitely being more active over there in 2025. You can follow me on Twitch as well. My link down in the description below. You can also check out the Casual Spikes podcast for me, my co-host Randy, over at MTG with Randy, not Modern with Randy anymore. And we talk about the various different regional championship qualifier, formats, the different seasons, kind of going over the metagame, playing some of those decks from those very popular metagames, and other types of Magic news kind of going on that we feel very important to touch on. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and subscribe over there. Lastly, I know, super long-winded, I want to thank the sponsor of the channel, Manatraders. Manatraders is a monthly subscription service where you can rent different cards to essentially build different decks and play in Moto Leagues. You can play in online challenges and even participate in their own free monthly tournament that changes formats, and you can qualify for their invitational at the end of the year. I would like to again thank Manatraders for for sponsoring the video. And if you use my code in the description down below, you'll end up getting 5% off your monthly subscription. So appreciate them for sponsoring the channel, and let's go ahead and talk about this Pioneer metagame. So real quickly, before we touch on the current state of the Pioneer metagame and really kind of understand what decks are kind of at the top here, the one thing I want to point out is that during the regional championship kind of season that we were going on, I'm not talking about the RCQs, I'm talking about the actual regional championships going on, pretty late into them, I don't believe that there was a single deck that won multiple regional championships. Just to kind of understand that there was a level of diversity of decks that ended up actually winning the events, and not to mention too that the Rakdos Cauldron deck that ended up winning the United States regional championships wasn't even the Rakdos deck that people would have penned to actually do well at this event. You know, we've had a lot of the Rakdos Prowess, Rakdos Aggro towards the top of the metagame at that time, and then we even saw like Selesnya Company kind of break out into a top 8 finish. We've seen, various different like Enigmatic Incarnations deck, different aggro decks. Of course, the Phoenix players, that sort of thing was kind of what players were playing towards and mostly registering for these events. We'd also seen like John Sacrifice, these green-black food decks that were playing in similar ways that were kind of set up the same thing, with like Jun building more into the kind of sacrifice component of the deck, where it had like a second gear, if you will, a second option that it could kind of switch into to make sure that it could end the game, where like green-black was kind of in on its combo sort of thing. But we fast forward to 2025. And unfortunately, coming up in all of the future RCQs through 2025 up to the beginning of 2026, there's going to be no Pioneer format. And as I was just kind of describing, that there was actually a pretty diverse metagame for Pioneer, and of course the regional championships, no repeat winners, and it looked like we were set up to have a big year for the new set of RCQs that were going to be taking place. Standard was looking great, Modern really not so much, and really to the extent for Standard, nobody really believed, I think, that the format, or at least there was a loud minority of people that just were completely convinced that Standard really wasn't in that good of a spot, and Pioneer was kind of looked at to break the mold, do something. Like, this is the other format, of the three, this is the format that people want to care about, and this is a format that people need for it to bring purpose to competitive Magic, because again, Standard is perceived to be bad, even though it really wasn't that bad. It was actually pretty good, I would think. And Modern went from having Nadu run the format to Boros Energy and Mardu Energy kind of taking over, and it being kind of definitely a rock paper scissors feeling kind of metagame. And Pioneer definitely delivered on that. So really, we should have been set up for huge success in 2025, 2026. But as we had seen, Standard is dominating a lot of the regional championship season. And of course, Modern gets to kind of be in there. And I think that's just from the fact that it is one of the most beloved formats. And really the only way that people stopped playing it was, when, hey, we know there's a ban coming in a few weeks and the format's miserable. So a lot of us aren't going to play it, or we're just doing way different things or whatever. Basically just forcing people to kind of not care about the format. So going into 2025, we have no regional championships or regional championship qualifier seasons, and in turn, no regional championships taking up Pioneer as the format of choice. We also have Pioneer essentially coming to Arena with Pioneer Masters and that great set and everything, and giving us like a 99%, I would say at worst like 96% of the Pioneer format on Arena currently. Yes, there is cards that are technically legal in Pioneer that are not on Arena yet, so we don't fully 100% card for card have Pioneer, but it seems like at least if you're going to take away Pioneer as the regional championship qualifier like circuit, and you're just going to have it be Standard and Modern, that Pioneer would be a good fit on Arena. It gives Arena players another Eternal format to play aside from Timeless and Timeless and Historic, that both focus on like alchemy cards, and then you also have players that are incentivized to kind of play limited, because then they can play some of these other limited environments that honestly have been absolute bangers, from the standard sets to the remastered to the sets like the Pioneer Masters that we saw on Arena. It's great. And then like I said, you don't have to play with the alchemy cards either if you play Pioneer. And in theory, you could reintegrate Pioneer also back into the regional championship circuit and even on the Pro Tour circuit as well, and have players kind of play this format and have this be an alternative way to play a constructed format with cards that actually exist in paper, and then incentivize them to also play in paper. And unfortunately, that doesn't seem like it's going to be the case. Again, Pioneer as just the format doesn't have all the cards on Arena to play anymore, or really to play the format. So you're still waiting on however many other sets to come out to kind of fill in the void that we still have in the format, be it how minor it is. I believe that there was at least, I want to say, a handful of cards, like at the very least, probably upwards of like 10 to 15 cards that had seen play either in sideboards or in main decks in the format that are not currently on Arena. And on top of that, we also have a pretty abysmal looking metagame, which I think also kind of goes back to the fact that the format really isn't regulated too much, and I think it's just kind of whatever, since it is mostly now relegated to online formats and kind of local locals events than playing in a regional championship on like a Saturday or something like that. Of course, we can see from the top here, Rakdos absolutely dominating the format in mid-range prowess and aggro respectively, commanding at least just about 7.5% for aggro, 8.6% for prowess, and 24, almost 25% for Rakdos mid-range. Doing some quick math here, I believe that is like 40%, almost 41% of the metagame is just Rakdos, like right at the top, which is pretty abysmal. And we kind of seen that even throughout the regional championships, the consistency that we had seen from a lot of these decks were, okay, you're playing Fatal Push, you're playing Thoughtseize, you're playing Fable of the Mirror Breaker. Like, this is kind of the recipe where, we would see some of the other decks like Rakdos Aggro tend more towards like Thoughtseize and Fatal Push. We would see more of the mid-range years decks that were playing just all three because they were all very powerful cards. But for the most part, most of the Rakdos decks were playing 8 of the 12 cards, and even sometimes you would see like very sparingly Fable the Mirror Breaker kind of show up in some of the maybe more like aggressive, like maybe grindier decks than you would see just the straight up, like, I'm going to try to win the game on like turn 2 or turn 3, like aggro decks that we've seen. But for the most part, that seems to hold true for the most part. And of course, the mouse package also showing up here in Pioneer as well, just kind of still showcasing how powerful that package is and how it just continues to be kind of the go-to aggro strategy for, both Standard and now Pioneer. We have Selesnya Company here, which was kind of a breakout-ish deck, I would say, during the like regional championship DC, where I actually ended up losing to the person that ended up top 8ing the event with this deck. So, I mean, kudos to them, because that was like it was a really interesting matchup, and I play tested against Selesnya Company a few times, like going through leagues and things like that, and had no problems, and then ended up losing when it mattered. So that sounds about right. Same thing when we played a lot of Modern, and we were Yawgmoth losing to the scam decks all the time, like in paper, but then when we play them online, we end up actually absolutely just trashing them. So is what it is there. But Selesnya Company being like this hate bear style deck that can kind of get some card advantage going thanks to Enduring Innocence, and of course Collected Company getting to hit multiple cards and just kind of disrupt your opponent long enough to where you can kind of cross the finish line there. Nibtolite, the go-to 5-color mid-range deck. At least for me personally, it's a deck that I think goes a lot bigger than Rakdos midrange, almost certainly goes a lot bigger than Rakdos midrange, and just makes it very hard where they want to kill your creatures, and that's fine, because Niv Reborn is going to come down and draw you like 4 or 5 cards and just kind of slowly put your Rakdos opponent away. We have like Izzet Phoenix, which was like a top 3 deck for the longest time, even when we had, Rakdos midrange with the Sorin Vein Ripper combo and the Amalia combo decks running around. This was still like in the top 3 decks to be playing in the format, and it's still probably should be one of the better decks, but this is kind of what happens to Izzet Phoenix. It just kind of goes, into a little bit of hibernation, then comes out somewhere. So hopefully if the format actually ends up mattering a little bit more, we'll see it kind of be pushed back to the forefront. We have the Nykthos ramp strategies, which always kind of stick around in this format, and they're still pretty good, and I would think they have a pretty good Rakdos mid-range matchup, at least from what I'm told. And this is even like kind of these other combo-y type builds where you just kind of like slowly just amass a giant board over on your opponent. 5-color enigmatic incarnation, focusing a lot on more of the overlords where you can impend them, their enchantments on the battlefield, and then you can sacrifice them and go get other creatures. You can even sacrifice some of the other ones to go get the other overlords to then just be able to have like a 6/6 that made 2/1/1 or made 2/1 flyers, and then is going to attack and make even more 2/1 flyers and just kind of overwhelm your opponent that way. Mono red prowess being another aggro deck that we've seen. We see a lot of the mono red prowess / aggro strategies in standard, and of course in Pioneer you get a lot of the really good pump spells on top of that, as well as some more aggressive creatures. Azorius Control, go-to control strategy. Jund Sacrifice, we talked about it a little bit earlier. While this just includes just the straight-up Jund Sacrifice builds, there's, of course, Green-Black, which is a pretty popular one that I know there was kind of some contention, I would say, between if you're supposed to play Jund or if you're supposed to play just Green-Black and focus more on the combo, or just be more of a sacrifice deck that just happens to have the combo, whatever the case may be. Still both very powerful strategies in my eyes and still like very fun to play. Azorius Flash being the spirits deck that can just, again, in ways that the green-white deck does, where you can kind of tempo your opponent out, except the green-white deck, I think, does a lot better of a job doing that. And, the counter spells, I feel like, kind of don't matter in the Azorius Flash deck. I think you just rather play, like, green-white, hate bears, essentially. Gruul Aggro, seemingly playing some of the mouse package as well, and, of course, getting to play the vehicles as well. So this is probably, like, the Gruul vehicles deck. Hidden Strings and Azorius Humans kind of round out our metagame. So, I would say at least at like the height of Pioneer, where we were at during that regional championship cycle, towards like the middle to end of the 2024 year, Pioneer was in a great place. I think there was plenty of viable decks, and it was kind of fun going to the event, and I don't think I really played against the same matchup between the main event, where I think I played like 6 or 7 rounds in the main event, and then played about 4 or 5 rounds, I would say, of another side event. So like 11 to 12 rounds of Pioneer, and I didn't play against the same deck twice, like during that whole weekend, and which is absolutely crazy, especially for a format that gets a pretty bad rep, as the Pioneer format does, for just being Rakdos or just being, like super broken deck, and everyone else trying to figure it out. And, it was like that up until the banning of Amalia and, of course, Sorin. And, unfortunately, we're here now in a spot where Pioneer doesn't necessarily matter in terms of a competitive format, for the fact that, again, there is no regional championship qualifier season, and in turn, no regional championships. I would assume that also means no Pro Tour events featuring Pioneer, and I'm sure that they would not want to feature this format if this metagame gives us any indication, which is focused mainly on, a lot of the Magic Online challenges, in which there was like a Magic Online challenge where I saw here recently, at least as I'm recording this video, that there was like 6 Rakdos mid-range decks in the top 8, and of course Rakdos mid-range ended up actually winning the event as well. So it was just crazy. And even looking through more, there was at least like 2, 3, 4 copies of Rakdos mid-range in just about every top 8. Of course, there was at least a few 5-0 decks as well. So Rakdos mid-range definitely feels like, at least from like the eye test, looks like a very powerful, and looks to be just the de facto best deck in the format. It's just a little unfortunate that, at least before, maybe it was the case, but it just wasn't nearly as dominant, I would think, as this. And like when you definitely put it into practice, it didn't necessarily feel that way. It definitely felt like you had to play really tight, and maybe that is the case now. But the fact that there's so many people picking this deck up, and it has such a high conversion rate, it seems, and putting tons and tons of decks into the top 8s of these, pretty big challenges, makes me believe that the format needs to make some changes as a whole to the metagame before that we can have Pioneer be kind of a featured format in the competitive scene. And who knows, maybe the 2025, or I guess 2026, 2027, year for competitive Magic, we'll feature Pioneer at some point. Maybe we'll have all three back in rotation, or maybe Modern takes a little bit of a backseat at that time. I don't know. I have a hard time believing that necessarily happens. I think it's more like we get all three in one season versus, having, a mix of Pioneer for 1 year and then Modern the next year, and so on, alternating until the inevitable heat death of the universe, something like that. But, I think as a whole, we have to care about the Pioneer metagame. I think that there has to be some serious discussions, at least by WotC, as to what is exactly healthy and what they want the Pioneer format to look like, because I think we need people to care about this format. I think that the fact that we have this kind of this format that is another Eternal format that is just uniquely different. There's no fetch lands in this format in the way that we know them. Of course, there's like Fable Passage and, whatever, like not good fetch lands, but, we don't have like the Windswept Heaths or the Scalding Tarns of, what Modern and Legacy have. Like, this is a unique format in that way where, we don't have, 4 and 5 color mana bases necessarily, running around doing things. Niv to Light and 5 color Enigmatic need to work pretty hard, I would say, to do that. They don't get like the deck thinning or anything like that, and usually there's a ton of 2-color decks, which we see a lot of Rakdos, Selesnya, Izzet, and even like blue-white kind of mixed into this, like, the top 10 decks of the format. So I think overall we need to find a way to get people to care about the format, and I think the format will kind of become healthy instead of just, players don't care about it, so we're not going to care about trying to fix things, and, whatever is will just happen. So that's kind of what I would like to see from Pioneer kind of going forward. And, of course, if you made it to the end of this video, I would greatly appreciate it if you'd left me a comment telling me what you think should happen to the Pioneer format and how you would fix it and try to get it back into kind of the mainstream of competitive Magic. I think that's going to be kind of the big thing and the big key for keeping this format around and keeping players invested in it as well. Because, if it doesn't qualify you for anything, it doesn't do anything, at least from a competitive standpoint, then kind of what's the point in playing the format unless you just genuinely enjoy it? And I can't imagine people genuinely enjoy a format where almost like 42% of the metagame is like Rakdos variants. So, let me know in the comments down below what you would change. Of course, subscribe to the channel, leave a like on the video, all that fun stuff. Check out all the links in the description down below. And yeah, that's going to do it for me in this video. Hope you all enjoyed it. I hope to see you all in the next one.